Welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to What's the Point? And I really think this episode you're going to be very glad you did, because my guest today is an incredible individual with a great message, and her name is Deb Krier. Hello, Deb.
Hello there, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm having a fine day, and better being able to record this with you. I'm really excited about it, and I really, truly believe that the listeners are going to get a ton of information and probably some entertainment and laughter as well.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. I mean, I have stuffed animals on the counter behind me. So
that you do. So if you're not on my YouTube channel, which is What's the Point, tune in. And they're cute little critters, and is a cute little guest. So Deb is a seasoned entrepreneur, a business owner. She's got a rich background in marketing and communications, public relations. Some time ago, she did communications for the American Cancer Society, and she worked for an oncologist. And all of that was, some would call it serendipity. Some would call it part of the plan of a higher power. And however you look at it, that helped set her up to be in a position to handle what started to be a life-altering journey when she was diagnosed with stage 4 triple-positive breast cancer in 2015. And as if that weren't enough, which she survived, and in 2023, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And in the middle, she had a little bout of skin cancer. So this woman is a warrior. She has taken on the task that life's presented her with a warrior mentality. She has started a foundation called TryingNotToDie.live. And as we talk further, you'll find that that's not just an empty phrase. The .live is very meaningful, and I'll ask her to explain that to us here in just a minute. But Deb, there's so much to talk to you about, but let me just start by asking, when you were at the point of all of your work experience, at least tangentially in the field of cancer treatment, research, et cetera, and then suddenly you were diagnosed with a very serious form of cancer, how did you react? What was that moment like?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm very honored to be on your podcast because it's a very important podcast. I enjoyed listening to some of the other episodes. You know, initially when I was diagnosed, they said it was stage 0, which is basically, we're going to watch stuff for a while, right? And so I was not freaked out at all. I was like, well, this is annoying. And, I had some doctor visits, some things in there. And then we decided, let's go ahead and pull some lymph nodes on what we call the bad side, right? The left side. And that came back with 8 of 12 lymph nodes positive for cancer. So I went from stage 0 to stage 3, poof, right? In the span of what it took for them to run the test. I was still annoyed. I mean, I literally told my doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. And she looked at me like, excuse me? And it was definitely a shock because, like I said, we'd been going merrily along with assuming there really was not going to be anything besides let's just watch things. And I found out that the cancer had spread through my online chart. I pulled up the test results, which they, merrily sent to me, and the word metastatic was in there, which means cancer has spread. I was really not happy because, and I talked to my doctor about it, and I told her, I said, reading it in my online chart is not the way someone should find out that they have something that could be a much bigger issue. Mm-hmm. And her response to me was, that's not my responsibility.
Excuse me?
That was kind of what I said to her. And there was another thing that she kind of dropped the ball on. And I, said something to her about that. And again, she said, that's my staff's responsibility. And I said, no, it is not. It might be their job to be doing whatever it is, but you're the CEO, you're the leader, you're the man, you're the whatever the heck we want to call it. And, and I said, it might be their responsibility to give me the information that I need or not give me the information, but it's your responsibility to make sure that they're doing it or not doing it.
Right.
And she still kind of scoffed at me, and that was the last time I saw her. It was like, nope,
Good.
nope, done. But yeah, it was an entertaining journey there. It's, and it has been the entire time.
Well, that could open up a big conversation and might later in the podcast about the current situation within medical care
Right.
in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we both have personal experiences
Mm-hmm.
that suggest things could be better in that
They
regard.
could, yes.
But let's not get to that right now, because so you now know that you've got stage 4, you know it's spreading, you know that you have at that point a doctor who wasn't necessarily the type of doctor most of us would want looking after us
Right.
in that situation. What was your next step? What then did you do to find a doctor that
Well,
and treatment, et cetera?
I didn't even have an oncologist. I mean, because they had been saying, and so this was a surgeon that I had been dealing with. And so a good friend of mine was unfortunately on this same journey. And she really, really, she is here in Atlanta, and she raved about her doctor. And so I decided to go see her. For a brief moment, I thought about going back to Colorado. We had been here a couple of years. I loved the oncologist that I worked with. And then my brain kicked in and I thought, okay, he was not young when I worked for him 30 years ago. So he's probably no longer practicing.
Okay, let me step in just for a quick second, because when you say here, you're in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, I am.
And you moved there from Colorado.
We did. Yep. We
I
moved
just want
here
to make
in
sure that the
2012. Yep.
listeners have
Sorry.
that picture of where you are and where you're from. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah. So I followed my friend's recommendation, which was a very good recommendation. I absolutely love my oncologist. I saw her yesterday. I had treatment yesterday, had holes poked in me yesterday. But then, of course, and at that point they were still saying just stage 3, which is, obviously still very serious. But then we kicked the treatment into high gear. It was no longer, hey, we're going to just, stop and watch this. And then that's when the world kind of totally fell apart. I developed a complication from my very first chemo treatment that now it was a massive treatment. It was 8 different drugs. And I got a complication that happens less than 1% of the time because I'm special. And, and fortunately, my doctor knew what it was. At that point in time, I was the only person that ever survived it because most of the time people didn't realize it was as serious as it was. I did go into septic shock, and my doctors argued over how soon I was going to die that day. And so I was in and out of ICU and surgery for about 7 weeks. And then, was back kind of on the road to recovery. Then that was the point where in one of those they did discover, or they decided that the diagnosis was stage 4 because I said, my rib hurts, the rib on the same bad side. They did a bone biopsy, and that was a really fun test because they do that with a drill. And it came back as inconclusive, which meant they didn't know one way or the other.
Yeah.
So my oncologist said, we're just going to say stage 4 because this kind of leads to what you and I were just talking about. The treatment protocol is different. For stage 4, you can almost pretty much do anything that the doctor says.
Let me take a quick step backwards.
Okay.
When you said the 2 doctors were having a discussion about how long you would live that day, was that in your presence?
They were in the hall, so they were very close.
Yeah,
Yes.
So did you hear that? Is what I'm getting
I
at.
heard it, and I was still in the ER at this point with people trying to decide what the heck they were going to do with me. And I honestly don't know how long I'd been there. For about 7 weeks, my concept of time went completely out of control. And my husband was there. And he said that was not their exact discussion, but it was pretty darn close, and I remember the surgeon was saying he was not going to even try. It was, he saw no need to try on a lost cause, right? And my oncologist said, you will try and you will do everything you possibly can. And obviously he did. He saved my life. He's another doctor, though, that I said, no, you're not touching me again. He actually did another surgery that was about 7.5 hours. And after that, he and I had an interaction, and it was it was interesting because there were my husband and maybe even my mother were there for this discussion. They don't know what he said, but something in my brain told me I couldn't go to sleep or I wouldn't wake up. Now, they said he certainly did not say that. He didn't come anywhere close. So I don't know what the heck my little twisted brain took into it. But that was when I thought, I don't like him. And I switched doctors again. And, it is one of the things that I talk to people a lot about, especially when you have a long-term chronic type of condition. Your medical team, you might not like them, but you had darn well better trust them. And so, I've kind of made some changes here and there over this almost 10 years. But yeah, I love my medical team now.
I think that's a really important point, Deb, and let me dig into that just a little bit more. Taking ownership of our situation, our health, our treatment, our wants, and what our understanding is, I think is critical in healthcare. And I believe in, and I've been guilty of this in the past, I assure you, that all too often we defer to a doctor because we think, well, they're a doctor and they've gone through all this medical school. The other side of me says, well, they call it medical practice for a reason. But, you said that you have to trust, and you don't have to like, but you have to trust. Here, let me just throw this out quickly because it's something I literally learned earlier this week.
Okay.
You also, and I won't go into the details, but I have learned that an equal mistake is sticking with a doctor because you like them, as opposed to vetting them and making sure that they're the best medical option for you.
Yes.
Because that turns out equally badly in too many cases. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah. I did get a second opinion from a different oncologist, and she said I would have done the same thing, and so more than anything, that made me feel good about the direction I was going in. But yeah, even if you agree, if you disagree, if it's something critical, life-threatening, life-altering, altering, then don't hesitate to get a second opinion. You might have to pay for it yourself. God love insurance, right? But it might be worth it for you to get that second opinion for your own peace of mind.
So in general, not just specific to this particular point in your cancer journey, but in life, was there a point, what is the advice that you were given that you're the most grateful that you did not follow? In other words, what's the worst advice you were ever given and that you were able to realize that and not follow?
I think it was when I was a little kid, a little girl. Now, I'm at the very end of the baby boomer generation. And I was told you should be and I was probably in junior high, maybe even in high school. Girls should be teachers or nurses. And I looked at them and went, and it was funny because at that age, and, even my first year or two of college, I was going to be an attorney. And, that really was not what little girls back in the early 80s, and certainly, earlier than that did. And fortunately, my mother said, you do what you want to do.
Good for her.
And yeah, I mean, she was, it's interesting. So as we record this, she passed away a year ago yesterday.
Oh boy.
And so, it's, she's been on my mind, obviously, an awful lot. But yeah, she very much said, you do what you want to do. And that was the way she lived her life.
And boy, that is really strong, powerful direction. And that's the exact opposite of what I was going at. What's the best advice you were given? And that it may not be the best advice you were ever given, but I would bet it kind of ties for number one. So let's go in that direction. What's the best advice you were ever given that you were either that you were able to follow as opposed to reject and regret?
Make your own decisions, and I probably was told it by multiple people. My father definitely supported me a lot. My mother, and it's interesting because I don't think they always understood what it was that I was doing, but they didn't try to tell me not to do it. So, I think that's the thing is, we need to go forward and, be brave about it. And sometimes being brave about it is the hardest thing.
One of my most recent guests, Dre Baldwin, talks about you gotta take the step, and if you fail, you fail. And another guest, Fred Miller, talks about first attempt in learning is his
Fail.
acronym for fail. So
Yes.
failure. Well, I was raised that failure's bad.
Right.
Don't fail. I've
Yes.
since learned, as I've grown in life, that failure is a necessary and integral part of
Right.
growing. So yeah, it's follow our own decisions and take people's advice,
Right.
but take it as advice and sort it out ourselves. So you're going through the breast cancer treatment and you're living life and you're taking control as best you can. But looking out for your best interest is a better way of saying
Yes.
what I mean by taking control. And then in, was it 2022 that you started TryingNotToDie.live?
Yes. Yeah. So my business coach had suggested that I do it. In fact, she shook her finger at me, right? And we were on Zoom and we'd been talking about business, because like I said, she's my business coach. And she told me, she said, you didn't go through everything you have gone through without using it to help others. And I said, yeah, but I don't want to be cancer girl. And I was already helping other people. Doctors would call me in when they had students. They would call me in when they had new patients, so I could talk to them and give them kind of that patient perspective, things like that. In the treatment room, which is, where I was yesterday, I'm always bebopping around asking people if they want sodas, if they, because the nurses are busy, right? So I'm always, being mishelpful. Once I know it's okay. I mean, during COVID when I couldn't do that, I didn't like that. But yeah, so she convinced me that I needed to start this initiative. And so then, of course, the first thing was, what the heck do we call it? And so that's where the TryingNotToDie.live came about. So I'm, and I still am, an only child, right? And so when I was very, very ill, my mother came from Kansas. I mean, that's one of those, I can't imagine that phone call that my husband had to make, because at that point, they did not know that if I would make it through the night. And so, I don't know what he told her, but of course she came right away and then stayed for 4.5 months. But one of the times when my my wonderful medical team came in and went, I got the disapproving mother face. And I said, what? And she said, you did not say thank you. And I said, oh, for heaven's sakes, Mom, I'm trying to not die. But then when we were thinking about this initiative later, that really struck home to me is that when we are faced with something, and sometimes even just the way some people go through life, we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. For whatever period of time that is, how are we going to live our life?
And I just love the thread of how all of that came together. And you talk about your business coach. We have thus far positioned you as Cancer Girl, and I apologize for that. But I think and we both think that there's a real important reason for doing that. I promise you, after we get a little bit further in your cancer journey and in your TryingNotToDie.live initiative, we're going to get to your core business. I'll call it core business, and you'll tell me if it is or not.
The pay the bills business. Yeah.
Oh, that. So TryingNotToDie.live. Live is an acronym. Tell us, please, take us through that acronym because it's powerful.
Sure. Right. So it's, the initial, and I'm a marketing person at heart. So we were going to do the website TryingNotToDie.com, and it was taken. So when you go through the, like GoDaddy or whoever, it makes suggestions as to other things, and it suggested Live. And I was like, well, duh. Right? And so we made it an acronym. And so it's that we need to lead our tribe. And you mentioned in my intro that I'm a warrior. We are warriors, but we're only going to get through this with our tribe around us. And so we're going to lead our tribe. And then we're going to invigorate our souls, putting ourselves first. because we have to during this journey.
Mhm.
And then we're going to voice our feelings because we have to be honest. And only the truth is how we're going to get through this. One of the things I tell people is fine is a 4-letter word, right? Bill, how you doing today? And you say, I'm fine. And that can be good, bad, anywhere in between. And so we have to be honest with our medical team, first of all, with ourselves, and then with our medical team, our friends, whoever. So we're going to voice our feelings, and then we're going to elevate our mindset to know that no matter what, we'll be okay. And I think that's one of the important things is we will get through this.
Mhm. There is an acronym for FINE, which I hesitate to share, but it's effed up, insecure, neurotic, and evasive.
Yes.
So there are all sorts of acronyms. Yeah, go a little deeper on how do you lead your tribe. I'm gonna go through all 4 and ask you to get a little deeper so that I and the listeners have a better understanding.
So, we've already kind of touched on it. Your medical team has to be the team you want and the team who is going to best serve you. So I have a lot of doctors because all these cancers, right? And then all the complications from all these cancers. And so you have that tribe around you, but you also have your family. And, I could not have done this without my husband. Just pure and simple. And then you have, your other family members. You've got your friends. We had only lived here in Atlanta for a couple of years when this struck. And so I didn't have a huge friend network, but the people who stepped up just absolutely amaze me still to this day, and, it really was one of those things. But it's also, your tribe doesn't have to be somebody close. I have a private Facebook group where I post just about, what I am personally going through. And it has over 400 people in it. Now, the vast majority of those are lurkers, and I don't even know if they even pay any attention anymore. They're probably thinking, oh my God, she's been doing this for 10 years. And I think that too. But some of the people who comment, step up, sent me gifts, all those various things were people that I didn't even think knew I existed. And so, how are you going to build that tribe? And the tribe changes as you're going through time and through what you need. But, you need to get the people around you who are best going to help you.
So the tribe changes because our situation changes and our needs change.
Right.
And that makes all the sense in the world. Now, you mentioned your private Facebook group. Is that something that you would like to share, if not now, at least in the show notes, or is it private?
Well, so we do have a Facebook page for TryingNotToDie.live, and more than happy to share that. Anybody who wants my own personal information, that's fine also. The nice thing is I'm not posting there terribly often because there's not a lot that's been going on. But yeah, so, we do encourage people to go to our Facebook page for TryingNotToDie.live, and the link is on our website.
Okay. So invigorating, that to me is, they're all equally important, but that's the one that stood out to me as much. Invigorate our soul, because that's kind of at our core.
We're scared to death, right? Somebody tells you have cancer, you have some other chronic serious illness, and fear just goes through our body. And so how are we going to think more positive? Now, there are times where I might be Pollyanna, right? But there are also times where I'm cranky. I mentioned I had treatment yesterday. So yesterday afternoon, I was, sleepy, cranky, grumpy. And but we have to put ourselves first, which might mean that one of the biggest things we have to do is tell people no. I can't do that. I'm tired today. Get somebody else. I'm going to have a bowl of cereal if you're on your own for dinner. Whatever. My husband and I have that discussion every once in a while, right? But yeah, you have to put yourself first. And I think in many cases, that's very difficult. I think especially for women, because we're used to being in the caregiver role as opposed to having care given to us.
Yeah, and a basic principle in life, and it's explained very, very clearly in the book, The Go-Giver, and through those of us
Oh,
that are
yes.
Go-Giver coaches and speakers. And without receiving, there can be no giving.
Right, right.
So
And I love Bob Berg. He is one of my favorite people. And the thing that I always like about him is he says, yeah, it's reciprocity, it's all of those things. And he also says it is not being selfish to put ourselves first.
Not at all. Not at all. And self-preservation and fighting and resisting people that are going to take what we have and standing up for our rights, all of that's not only fine, it's encouraged and it's essential to not be taken advantage of. So we'll move on from there.
Right.
But
I know we could talk about all these all day.
yeah, and so what a great segue to voice your feelings.
Right. Like we said, we have to be honest. And we have to tell people what we want. Several weeks ago, so I had an ultrasound just for a checkup for my thyroid cancer. And what they had done was they had removed my thyroid, totally removed the thyroid gland. And so now I'm on the once a year mode and to see that doctor. So I had an ultrasound and it came, and here's another one of those where it was released in my chart. And there was a lesion that it could see. And of course, I hit the panic button, right? This has been 18-ish months since we've really been working with this. So I messaged that doctor, and I was due to have an appointment with him. I actually just had it this week. He really loves messaging. That's cool. I'm fine with doing that. And so I messaged him. Less than 4 or 5 hours later, he responded, and he said, yeah, I see the results. I don't think there's any need to worry. And I responded and I said, no, and he actually said, let's wait and redo the test in 6 months. And my response was, that's not acceptable. We're skipping ahead in this process, and we're going to do the needle biopsy, and we're going to do it soon. And he came back with very rational, good information. But I still was like, nope, not going to do this. And he did say, hey, you're coming in just a couple weeks. Let's discuss it then. I thought, okay, I can wait a couple weeks. But I happened to see my oncologist that during that same time, showed her the test results, and she agreed with him. But then she looked at me. Now, mind you, she's been my doctor for almost 10 years now. And she looked at me and she said, but this is really bothering you, isn't it? And I said, well, yes. And she said, okay, I'm going to send you to another doctor. I saw that doctor the next week. He said the ultrasound, he actually did another ultrasound. Nothing showed up at that point. And he said, you're good. You are fine. And in fact, he said I think they misread the original ultrasound. But, and then I felt better. But when I saw my doctor this week, the endocrinologist, he apologized. And he said, I never should have told you we should wait. He said, I totally forgot about your history. And he said, I can see where you were concerned. But that is that, we have to be honest. And more importantly, our doctors, our family, our friends, whoever, they don't read our minds. So if there's something going on, we have got to be honest and tell them about it. And again, stand up for yourself.
That is an absolute essential, and anyone listening or watching, please, if you take nothing else from this, take that. Take that. We have got to stand up for ourselves and use our voice. And I'm not saying go to extremes and complain and demand things that aren't necessary. But what you just said, Deb, is the kind of thing that is human. It's so common in all of business, but also in the medical field, where I didn't recall your history.
Right.
Who knows our history better than us? So if someone says, no, we'll wait 6 months, and you've gone through what you've gone through, they're either not paying attention or they can't, as the saying goes, read the room.
Right.
And voicing and saying, okay, that's not acceptable, and here's why. I had another guest not too long ago, Jackie McEwen Powell, who same situation where she ended up taking charge of her own health journey, and guess what? She is, and go back and listen to that episode if you want to figure out how to champion yourself. So again, I'm getting off the soapbox now, but we are elevating our minds next. Go deeper on that, please, Deb.
It's funny because I say on the website, you will be fine. And what I mean by that is when we are living our life to the best possible way for however long we have. I mean, it might be, I tell people I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So how are we going to live our life between now and then? Are we, I had somebody say that they're no longer on Facebook because they can't take all the negativity. Okay. That's one of the, do we have friends who are toxic? Are we in a bad work environment? Whatever it is, we need to put our minds in the place where we're going to be in the best place. Now, I firmly believe that humor is a really big part. And you mentioned that at the very start, a very big part of all of this. But yeah, for many people, obviously their faith comes into this, where, they know that no matter what, everything will be fine because they're going to heaven. They're, whatever their faith tells them, all of those things, we'll be fine. We really will be okay. Is it going to be bumpy? Well, yes. But it'll work out. But we have to be the person in charge.
100%. And adding something that I'm sure you've addressed and talked about, but I've not come across it in my reading of your work. We also have to get to the point of understanding death is imminent.
Right.
We are going to die.
Everybody dies.
Yeah, the number one cause of death, you know what that is, right?
Death.
It's birth. Number one cause of death is birth.
Yeah.
And yet we don't talk about that, and we don't prepare for that.
Right.
And I'm just now gaining an awareness of that. And I don't know if it has to do with my advancing years, which I'm grateful for, because the alternative is I would have found out about
we don't
this
like
a
the
long time
alternative.
ago. But understanding that death is going to happen, and we have to understand, are we going to fight tooth and nail to stay alive as long as we possibly can, regardless of quality of life? That's a whole different issue, but one that comes under, it's trying not to die is fine. Trying not to ever die, no matter what, is unrealistic.
Right.
Go ahead.
But do we want our headstones to say, I wish I would have?
Yeah.
No. Go out and live your life. I had somebody say their ultimate dream was that they went on, they went to every continent. That's probably not going to work because finances, all sorts of different things. There are museums, there are books. You can virtually do a lot of this, and so don't put things off. I'm taking my aunt and uncle, along with my husband, on an Alaska cruise in several months, because they were the caregivers for my mother. I mentioned that she passed away a year ago. So this is our way of showing them how grateful we are. Could we have said, we'll do it at some point? Of course. But it was like, no, let's get it scheduled and let's get it done now.
I actually heard a sermon this past weekend. The comment that really hit me was, life is not a parking lot. We can't just park ourselves.
Right.
And that just supports what you just said. People tell me, boy, you travel a lot. And I say, well, why not? What am I going to wait for? And I've got friends who say, well, I can retire in X number of years and I'll have this one. And what are you going to do between now and then? And are you sure you're going to be here then? We have to evaluate all of that. And there's a lot of decisions to be made. But let's move from cancer girl to business executive. It's kind of funny. Prior to us, to me hitting the record button, Deb and I were joking a little bit, actually joking a lot. But one of the things I said, you're comfortable doing a podcast, right? And that was a complete tongue-in-cheek because your podcast has over 1,000 episodes. Is that right?
Yes. So I do have a podcast called The Business Power Hour. I always have to say the because that's part of the trademarked name. And yesterday I recorded episode 1055. And so I've been doing it obviously a very long time. I absolutely love it. I mean, out of all of those, there have been, I think, 3 guests where I got partway through and thought, ooh, right. And to me, that's my fault. I hadn't done the right research, whatever it was. And yeah, we're talking business. It's the Business Power Hour. But learning about why someone is doing what they're doing, And so I like to delve a little bit deeper. I never do any Geraldo gotcha questions or things like that. But the cool thing, I've talked to people from around the world. As we're recording this, the podcast that went live yesterday is a 15-year-old boy who lives in Pakistan who is studying AI in an online university. He was absolutely fascinating, and that kid's going to rule the world. But yeah, I have so much fun doing that. But I do, I alluded to it. I have my own marketing firm. It's Wise Women Communications. And we passed our 20-year mark quite a long time ago. It is the what pays the bills, right? But I love doing it because I love my clients.
And that's fabulous. My wife has a communication strategy firm herself. So yeah, it's really a fun and essential business because understanding communication, how to communicate,
Right.
And what to communicate are key elements. And that's why I do communication workshops and communication coaching, because even like we're doing right now, one-on-one communication,
Right.
My favorite communication quote of all time, and people that are longtime listeners have heard it ad nauseum, but George Bernard Shaw says the problem with communication is the illusion that it occurred.
Yep. Oh,
Because
yeah.
we say something and assume people have heard it the way we wanted them to
Right.
hear it, and it's almost never the case.
Right.
Communication is critical. What to say, how to say it, and when to say it.
Right. And again, how to make sure that your message was interpreted the right way. Social media, I think, is probably one of the best and the worst things that has happened, because, we read what someone wrote. Well, were they being funny? Were they being sarcastic? Were they being a devil's advocate? Did they have a typo in it that said something that they didn't even really mean to? Or body language, all of those things when we're in person.
And even then in person, Professor Morabian out of UCLA has done a study on communication, and it's often misquoted, but in normal situations, 50% of our communication is nonverbal. It's body language
Right.
and tone. And people will say it's 90%, but that's in an extreme emotional situation. So, it's important, and that is lost on people in written
Right.
communication. Thus, the invention of emojis.
I know. Yes, I can put my little happy face. And I love Zoom, right? We're on and all these various technologies, but we do lose some of that nuances that are there, and I think that's one of the issues maybe that we're having, is we're kind of losing those extra levels of communicating with somebody. It's great to be able to communicate with people around the world, but yeah, are we missing out on the subtle things that were just so important to the understanding?
Yeah, and one more comment on that. I think it's important that, and this is society in general. This is nothing other than a observation of society in general. We've all gotten to, I'll use the phrase, sound bites. We've all gotten to tiny, quick messaging, which doesn't allow us the time to deliver nuance nor receive nuance. And the other thing that I see going on, and I've been guilty myself, and I try to catch myself, is looking to reply rather than understand and take it in before we
Right.
respond. Taking that minute, like you said, is this really something that is trying to be humorous, or is this something that's very serious? And we all too often make that decision based on our situation without taking time to try to understand
Right.
the other person's
Right.
situation.
Right.
So
Well,
now
and
that
we
we've
all
gotten
seem to think that this screen is a shield, so I can say whatever I want.
especially when there's no camera. Especially
Right.
when you can put whatever little acronym or name or handle that you want to. It's 100% anonymous for the most part. I mean, and people take full advantage of that,
Right.
which is why spam folders came about and delete and block came about.
And
But
you
we're
can
way-
scroll past things on Facebook. You don't have to read, and you certainly don't have to respond.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same kind of thing. We don't have to act on every thought we've had. we can scroll past some of our own thinking,
Yep.
which is oftentimes a good thing. So let me ask you this, Deb, because I'm trying to be respectful of time, and we're kind of at the end of what I asked you to commit to. And thank you so much for the gift of your time.
Oh, again, thank you. This has been
and-
so much fun.
And folks, all of Deb's information will be in the show notes. DebKrier.com, the Power Hour podcast, TryingNotToDie.live. That's LIVE. All of that will be in the show notes. But this woman is fascinating, and I'll repeat what I said to start. She is an absolute warrior. And when we were first getting to know each other, I mentioned to her a friend of mine who is just got one of the most robust, positive, spiritually based, fabulous attitudes toward the cancer that he was recently diagnosed with. And I just as an example mentioned his Facebook page to Deb, and the first thing I know, I see, Deb Krier made a message on your friend's thing. It says warrior. And so all you people battling this, and frankly, everyone who's in the support groups are also warriors,
Right.
because this is a battle. It's an absolute war against this cancer and other illness.
Right. Our caregivers are the true superheroes in all of this.
And all too often unappreciated,
Oh, yes.
under the radar, and taken for granted. So if you are or have awareness of a caregiver, thank them, because one day we're all going to need a caregiver. So the pointing things forward for you, what do you see in your future? What's the point that you're moving towards?
So, and I don't even know if I mentioned this when we did our pre-chat. I am studying to be a cancer coach.
Wow.
And
okay.
so, and what the people I am wanting to work with are executives and business owners, because, that's me. So that's my people, right? But it's so many times when someone at that level, and, especially if they have employees, all sorts of things, when they are told they have cancer, so many things race through their minds because they have the commitment to their business. How are they going to do that? How are they going to deal with it? And so many times what they do is they don't tell anybody they're going through this. So then they miss and obviously it's a personal choice, but, I tell people, if people are smart, they're going to figure out there's something going on. And if you don't tell them, then they make it up. And so, how can you work through this as an executive and come out on the other end even better? And I think that is kind of the goal with all of this. People ask me, am I sad I had cancer? Well, I'm up to 35 surgical procedures, right? My scars have scars, and so, yeah, could I have done without that? Yes. But where I am now, I hope I am a much better person because of all of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of life. It's we have events that happen, good and bad, and what's best for us to do is ask, what's the lesson that we
Right.
were given this for? I heard a great phrase not too long ago, and in particular, we talked earlier in the episode about failure and negative outcomes, but it's learn the lesson, leave the event.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah. And that comes from hanging around with people that are wiser than me. So
Which
I'm
we
like a
always
sponge.
should do.
Yeah, it's and in my case, it's easy.
Now.
Now.
I think you're a pretty sharp dude.
Thank you, and you're amazing. So the overall question that I try to end every show with, and you can answer this in whatever perspective you care to, and that very simply, Deb, is what's the point?
The point is to leave a legacy that is a positive legacy. When you're done, think, okay, I did everything I needed to do.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is succinct. That's another thing that I was in a discussion about just this past week. And you defined wonderfully the takeaway that my discussion earlier in the week came to. It's not necessarily about leaving buildings with our name on it. It's have we accomplished what we wanted to and what we needed to and what we could do. And for that, I thank you for sharing it so succinctly. Deb Krier, you're an amazing woman. Thank you for your time. Thank you
thank
for your insights. Thank you for being a warrior, a champion for others. And thank you for having little stuffed animals behind you, because that's, and that nice painting of a flower in full bloom and your smile. Boy, that makes it really easy to do interviews. So you're amazing. I'm very happy that we connected, and I look forward to furthering our relationship.
Oh, yes, most definitely. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise there is value to be gained in every one. Taking a second to rate, review, and share the show helps make us more discoverable and enables others to find out what's the point. If you'd like to learn more about Bill Ellis and his services, please visit his website, billellis.com. See you next time.